Hello guys, how's it going? Screwzilla here, I hope you are all well. Well, it's round 3 of naval battle testing. Knights of the Sea, War Thunder, ships, well, small boats really. So, we've got the Germans and the Russians. We have the Schnellboat, the S-100. We've had that before, so we know what it's about. It's a fantastic little ship. It's got the twin facing torpedoes, which are really handy. Pretty fast, pretty sleek, and it has got some serious firepower. Actually, wait, let's see the additional bit. Oh, what do you call it? The SP something again. So it's slightly confusing. But anyway, this ship is pretty bloody powerful, pretty spectacular. The rear guns on this thing are what you want to use. It's got some serious rear gun action. So if we just spin around here, you can see it's got the pom-pom guns. So quad, I think they're 20mm guns on it. So you've got pretty much 6 20mm on this thing, about 9 20mm on this thing. So it's a pretty devastating thing to unleash upon people with all those guns. And the torpedoes on this are great because you can do it head on. They do come out at a slight angle, and you have to release the torpedo at least 60 meters before the front of the enemy ships. So in this mode, there's actually it's a slightly new mode they're testing out, which is where you have to do a convoy of ships. So you're doing a convoy. Let's switch to player camera. So do a convoy of your Liberty transport ships, basically, or German or Russian equivalents, but they're all Liberty transport vessels, guarded by gunboats, basically. Now these ships are pretty thickly armoured, so you can't take them out with most guns. The only vehicle able to take it out with guns is actually the Russian large boat, the Project 122 Bish submarine chaser, which has those 85mm on board, the K90s, with some serious armor-piercing rounds on it. That's both a good thing and a bad thing, and I'll get to that soon. But right now we're talking about the German aspect. Now, Knights of the Sea and the naval combat and War Thunder is still very much point and click, and that's it. Now, although this is arcade mode, so realistic battles might be very different, it is really difficult to get a fine grasp on this because it's hard to sort of get an idea about what's going on. Pop the HUD back on now, actually. As you can see, I've taken a shit ton of damage here. I've actually killed a couple of ships. I launched my torpedoes quite early, and they do no damage to this guy. Another S-100. As I said, oddly, at the start of the game it was coming up with a different name for the ship, so really weird. But he gets the better of me, of course, because there's more of them. But I have enough points to spawn in with the next boat, which is the one I want to mainly talk about, which is the MZ1, the Advanced German Boat project created at the end of World War II. And this is a boat that's closer to a destroyer. Actually, in World of Warships, if you play that game, it is technically a destroyer. It's quite a big boat, as you can see. It's not a true destroyer, it's not nearly big enough for that, but it's a small destroyer, let's say, for argument's sake. Now this is a much more interesting boat to use in combat, and I find it's actually more fun to be using this size vessel than the tiny little torpedo boats that whiz around. mainly because the torpedo boats, you can't aim for shit. As you can see, the waves are very choppy, and I don't know if that's going to be in every game mode, but aiming in this mode is pretty much impossible. You just have to guesstimate and just hold down the key, the fire key, and just hope for the best. This boat is pretty good though, and I do actually like it. As you see, just some fair damage. Got a relatively big high explosive shell as well, which is very handy. So you've got almost 700 grams of TNT explosives on here in a high explosive, and this rips through pretty much every boat in game currently. So all the little torpedo boats and stuff, one hit with this shell in it, it's pretty much half of their crew gone and half of their boat gone. The damage still feels a bit off. There's a lot of things to do in this game still. The MZ1 is a pretty cool boat though. It's got torpedoes, depth charges, and also the guns on it. So you've got... Sorry, I'm just reading 3 bits on it as I go along. I'm a little bit tired today. So you've got the 88mm cannons, basically like the Flak 88s, which are great guns, and you've got several 20mm guns. So you can rain down a hell of a lot of fire. Anything that gets close to you is pretty much doomed. Those 20mm are the things that do serious damage. As you see there, the high explosives hit and absolutely rip that guy apart. So the sub-chase you see over there is the Russian large ship, and we'll get onto that shortly. The biggest thing I'm finding in naval combat is you have to move slower to actually get aim on target. If you're flying through the water, there's no chance of aiming. So it's a bit like ground forces in the fact that you have to be still to get good shots. In the larger boats you can actually move and get shots, which makes sense because they have less roll on them. But this leads me to believe that War Thunder have really made a big mistake here in their belief of what will work in this game. So you see me punching that Liberty ship there with my high explosives and not penetrating and doing any damage whatsoever. So I go against the sub-chaser over here, start firing off my 88s and 20s at him, trying to get a lead on him and trying to get some shots off. It's very hard at this range to get any angle because the waves are so choppy. There's no real pattern to them yet. I don't know if that's something they'll fix as well, because currently the wave model system is just all over the place. Waves are choppy, not in a wave formation, which really does affect the gameplay, because if they were choppy you could get in between a gully and actually be relatively still for a few moments and use the gully as cover and things like all this different stuff you can do in naval combat. But currently the ships are just so... Sorry, I had some terrible medicine before and it's in the back of my throat now, it's all I can taste. But currently it's just so awkward and so cumbersome. It's just very hard to know what's going on. And the other big thing is the damage to your ship. It's very hard to know what's happening with your boat. So you see this gunboat here is actually in a gully of waves at the moment, but it doesn't really make much sense considering how the wave formations are. Finally get rid of that guy, delete him with a massive round of the 88s. As I said, those high explosives really rip through pretty much all the ships in the game at the moment. But as I'm saying, the biggest problem in this game mode is the lack of being able to aim. I think they need to work on the aiming system so it's less bouncy. So, although ships had roll and things like that, gunners would calculate into that. No, machine gunners wouldn't, but gunners would. Now there you see the game ending. It's because we ran out of points. I think we actually won that game. But the games are very short in this mode, because if you go after the AI boats, and kill them, like this guy was probably doing in a plane, you rack up all the points and win the game instantly. Because similar to how in air combat you get the I think this was the one. You get the sort of tanks you have to protect and vehicles you have to protect thing. In the naval combat you have a similar sort of system, and it's much harder. So here you see the Liberty ship we have to protect. Oddly, I'm not starting on my actual self in these replays, which makes no sense. As I said, there's quite a few bugs and things that need to be fixed. There's also a bug that lets you pass through ships, and the propellers aren't working and things like that. So there's a lot of little tweaks like that, and this is why it's in beta at the moment. You know, beta testing is important. So German boat's done. Now we're on to the Russian side of things. So we're in the Project 118 Bolshevik torpedo boat. Relatively decent little boat, although you don't have the firepower of the Chanel boat. The torpedoes on it are relatively good. Don't have much range, but they will really do some damage if you hit people with them. The depth charges, I still don't get why they've got depth charges. They really aren't there to affect ships. Yeah, who knows. So this ship has some armour. It's up to 7mm of armour. And it also has the autocannons, twin 25mm autocannons, and they're reasonably good. But it's nowhere near the Chanel boat. Like, these things, if you get into a point where they're shooting at each other, the Chanel boat's got the firepower to destroy this thing, and it just is pretty underwhelming. And as I say, it's sort of, I think they need to do these battles on lakes or in harbours, natural harbours or things like that, rather than the open ocean, because it's just too choppy to actually be able to have fun in these small boats. These patrol boats, they weren't meant for deep sea naval combat. Although there are a few that could take in that role, but the majority of these things aren't meant for this sort of heavy rolling sort of weather that you're in. So what else to say really about this boat? It's relatively good. It's got a shallow depth, so quite small as well. The depth charges are actually quite handy. I've actually managed to kill a couple of people with the depth charges. Yeah, I know it doesn't make sense, but we'll just carry on with it. Depth charges could be used in an offensive purpose for ships, of course, if you set the bomb delay time. But you'd also have to change the ballast on them, which would take a lot longer, because depth charges sank at a relatively speedy rate. They went down pretty quickly to their sort of chosen depth. So what would happen is they would launch them all and set them to explode at certain depths, but the depth charge itself didn't have any buoyancy, so they would all sink at the same time. You know, you'd launch them separately, so they'd all sink at the same time, but one would explode 10 meters below the water, one would explode 20, 30, 40, and that's how you clear subs, of course. With boats, it doesn't make much sense, because if a depth charge goes off at, you know, 10 meters below the water, it's going to cause some damage below the boat, but it's not nearly enough to blow it out the water, especially the depth charges we're dealing with here, which are very small caliber. So here I'm rushing in, basically. I'm just... oh my god, this medicine is disgusting. So I'm coming in very fast, very hard, just really trying to get a hold of the big Russian boat to give it a try out. So I'm not playing very smart here. One thing I actually did do with this gun, though, is I did manage to penetrate the hull of one of the Liberty carriers, which I was surprised at. But the big problem is you don't know how quickly you're dying, you don't know how well your boat's doing. So I died there pretty quickly. But it doesn't feel intuitive, you know, you don't see incoming fire, you don't really feel for it, you don't really notice it happening. And it's a really odd sort of... it's hard to describe it, you know, in ground warfare, sometimes you don't see when you got hit, but you sort of understand, okay, so he shot from there, I get it. Whereas in this, you're getting shot from so many sides, from so many areas, and it's so hectic that you don't even know what's going on. So you're sort of like, well, I don't know what the hell's happening, and it's hard to actually compensate for it, because you can't really do much. As I said, because basically you're being tossed and turned around so much on the water, aiming is pretty much impossible. It's just praying and spraying all the time. Which really, as I said, it really kills it for me. I know they want this sort of fast-paced, high-octane naval combat, but if you're doing that, you can't have it on the open sea. It's got to be down rivers or in ports where the water is relatively calm and you can actually take aim. Or give us bigger boats where it's not rolling as much and we can keep them slightly steady. Because at the moment we're just sort of basically just guesstimating where you're shooting at. There's no real finesse to it. It's just like anybody could pick this up, anybody could just blast away, and anyone can have a good game. But then the same can be said, anyone can have a bad game, because you can just pick it up and anyone can just kill you. Because you don't really need much skill in it. All you need to do is, if you get a target on lock and fire enough, you know, 20mm cannon machine guns at them, they're going down, and there's no real sort of... there's no point aiming anywhere specific, because you're not going to hit it, because there's just so much roll and so much bounce from all the shipping. So right here we've got a big cluster of boats, and this is pretty much where I get most of my kills from in this game. As you see, one guy beached it almost, and he's being targeted by everybody. And, you know, firing away and just keeping an eye on everything. Torpedoes feel pretty useless in the game, because they're very slow moving. Most torpedoes feel like they're moving at, you know, a quarter of the speed of the ships, which torpedoes generally were going around about 44, 50 knots, which is pretty fast. Let me... work out miles per hour. So 44 knots is about 50 miles per hour, and considering most of these small little torpedo boats go 50 miles per hour anyway, you're basically outrunning the torpedoes. The bigger boats, the MZ1 for instance, and that sub-chaser, yeah, you can hit with torpedoes. But again, you generally don't seem to, because they're so slow and cumbersome they don't really do much. So I think I actually do get a torpedo kill with that one. There we go, yeah. Which is something at least, and I dodge a torpedo there from somewhere. Maybe they need to remove the torpedo warning parts of this to make it a little bit more fair and a bit harder almost, because it's a bit too easy. It just, as I said, it just doesn't feel like real naval combat. It just feels like you're whizzing around in tiny boats, firing at people and not much else. You know, it doesn't really feel like naval warfare where you're, you know, duking it out over a couple of kilometers with each other in a battle of wits and a game of chess. It's more a game of who can get there first and blast their guns off and hold down the left button of their mouse. So anyway, ranting over, finally get to the Project 122 this sub-chaser. So I did a little bit of a video on this before. Pretty excited about the boat because it's a bit of a larger boat. It's more towards that destroyer size than anything else. And as I said on my prior part of this video with the German one, the Agent of One, it feels more interesting because being bigger, there's less roll, so you can actually take aim at things. So you'll see me here actually taking aim at things and hitting them, which feels great. They're much slower than the patrol boats, of course, but again, that makes it really interesting. You've got some pretty good armaments on there. You've got the 85mm K90, as I said before, with those high explosive armor-piercing shells. So with these ones, whereas with the German ones, there's no penetration value to them. With these, you've got almost 120-130mm of penetration at most ranges. So you tend to be able to penetrate things and do damage to stuff, which is the big thing for it. It really helps the sort of game in that respect, because you can actually damage ships with this. However, the down part of that is when you're firing against other players with this gun, it over-penetrates all the time and doesn't cause any damage to them. So you can fire at their waterline, it goes straight through it and ends up the other side of the ship, halfway across the map before it explodes. So it's sort of, you know, it's designed for heavier ship fighting than, you know, light wooden boats. This boat is not meant to be fighting, you know, tiny little wooden ships. This is meant to be fighting, you know, destroyers and stuff like that, or, as the title says, chasing submarines. So one of the cool things about this ship is you do have the rocket-launched bombs on the front of it, which sounded great, and I thought, oh, that's an interesting feature. However, there isn't a button for it. So to launch them, you've got to launch all of your depth charges at the back, and then you can launch the bombs. And the bombs only have a range of about, probably about 10-20 meters. So they only go just very close in front of you, which makes them pretty much useless. So here I see a guy sort of a bit stuck, same ship as me, firing towards him, turn on bow on just so I can take less damage than him. I've exposed myself to a couple of gunboats, but I'm taking some shots at his bridge, destroying some vital parts of the ship. And as you can see, I can actually aim now, and that's a big difference maker. I try out some of those bombs, and as you see, he's not that far away from me, but the bomb's very short range. You see, they only have a range of about 20 meters at most. So they're pretty hopeless. There's not much use to them unless somebody's right next to you, in which case you're pretty bollocksed anyway. So what's the point in having those on there, really? It just, as I said, it makes no sense. I'm sorry for tapping my mic there. As you see, I deleted that ship pretty quickly. And this gunboat over here, again, I'm taking some good shots at him. Because it's a much more stable platform, you can just take those shots and actually hit stuff with it. Which, as I said, it's much more fun. You can sort of work out your trajectory and work out how the guns are working, rather than just holding down machine guns and just hoping for the best, because basically that's all the gameplay is in this mode, is just holding down machine guns, hoping for the best. I think the most interesting part of this gameplay is actually the air combat, because that's where most of the wins are coming from, especially in this mode. Again, the one there just getting right in my way. But in this mode, generally the air combat is what wins the game, or loses the game for you. If you don't protect those Liberty ships, they're all gone, and your game's over. The thing is though, a bomber can take those out pretty easily. So you've got the HE-111, you can just drop a single 1,000-pounder on one of those and it's out of the game. If you're really good, you can sort of just delete them pretty quickly. I think Fly Daily did a video earlier on with this, and he was flying the HE-111, managed to take out 3 or 4 of the ships in a span of a minute or two, and won the game for his team. That's not what we want in naval combat. We don't want quick, short games. Yes, there needs to be that arcade, sort of fast-paced action mode in this, but there needs to be a strategic mode as well. There needs to be an actual... there needs to be naval combat. As you see on those cargo ships, I'm really damaging them with my guns here. Which is good. It seems they're actually adding modular damage to ships now, which is something. An IL-4 here coming in at me. Suspecting he's going to drop some bombs or torpedoes, so I'm trying to evade him as much as I can. Try and fire my anti-aircraft guns at him. Again, another thing I said in one of my prior videos to this is the thing of basically, I think they need the anti-aircraft guns AI controlled, because there's just too much you've got to do on these ships. Watch me against this the ship that is exactly the same as me firing against him. Now he's getting wrecked by bombs, but me firing at him is very ineffective because my guns are over-penetrating in every shot. Luckily he was taken out by a bomb, but basically all you're doing is just firing the guns, just hoping for the best, and salvo after salvo, you're just sitting there with the left button pressed down, and that's all you're doing in the gameplay. That's all you can do. Because, again, I tried to use the air-launched bombs 40 meters away, and as you see, nothing. These are a 20-meter radius weapon, and then I get taken out by bombs from a bomber. Which is pretty much the story of this gameplay, really. It is just air combat. Which is, I guess, realistic, because air was the big winner of the naval battles of World War II, air supremacy, but we don't seem to want that in War Thunder. We want an actual naval combat arena. So look, sorry about the ranty video today, and sorry about the downtone on it. It was fun, it's fun, but it's not what many of us want, and that's the unfortunate thing, and hopefully Gaijin will listen to this feedback and the feedback that a lot of people are giving and actually rework this, because I think naval combat needs to be naval combat, not inland patrol boat combat. Alright guys, and with that, I hope you enjoyed the video. I'll catch you again soon, and this is Screezilla out. Please like, comment, subscribe, and all those usual things. And I will catch you again soon. And also, I'd really love to hear your thoughts on the naval combat as well if you've been playing. Thanks guys, have a great day. See you again soon. Bye bye.